Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are strapping in for one of our most fascinating geoeconomic explorations yet. We're heading straight for the Himalayas.
To the Kingdom of Bhutan.
Exactly, the land of the Thunder Dragon. It's the nation famous for measuring its success not just by GDP, but by gross national happiness.
Which is a really unique governing philosophy.
Hmm.
And you can see that intent, that focus on cultural preservation, it just translates directly into every piece of their legislation.
And that's what we're looking at today. We're going deep into Bhutan's digital economy, specifically its very unique iGaming landscape.
Uh-huh.
And for this mission, we are drawing from our own specialty. As you know, we're the Gambling Databases research team, and we're dedicated to delivering these kinds of in-depth analyses.
Right. In each report we do, we look at everything.
Mm.
Local regulations, tax, the player experience, what it's like for operators.
The whole picture. Our goal is always to give you a really clear, data-driven understanding of how this industry actually works in each specific market.
And, our findings in Bhutan, they really reveal this stunning paradox.
A paradox.
Yeah. On one hand, you have a market that offers incredible regulatory clarity. It's predictable, it's stable. I mean, if you ask any operator what they want, that's the checklist.
Sure.
But then these strengths are combined with these just severe economic and administrative barriers that make commercial entry for any new operator, well, it's virtually impossible.
So it's the perfect, beautifully compliant environment that almost nobody can actually afford to be in.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Okay, before we dive into the details, let's set the scale here. We're talking about a population of only about 771,000 people.
Tiny.
And the total market revenue for iGaming is projected at just $27 million for 2024.
Right. And while you see a healthy growth rate, that 10.5% CAGR, you have to remember the baseline is microscopic.
And internet penetration is only around 65%. That scarcity of people and, frankly, available money is the critical context for everything else we're about to discuss.
Exactly. That gross national happiness philosophy.
Yeah.
It's key. It basically suggests that any business that could compromise social well-being has to be, very tightly managed.
Or just discouraged from the start.
Or discouraged, yeah.
So let's jump right in. Section 1. The regulatory framework. In a country like this, who's actually in charge of this industry?
Well, the control is extremely tight. It all comes from a very conservative legal tradition. The primary authority isn't some independent gaming body like you might expect.
No.
It's the Ministry of Finance.
It's the Ministry of Finance.
Specifically, their Department of Revenue and Customs. And that placement alone, it immediately tells you how the government sees iGaming.
It's about revenue and compliance, not about, commercial expansion.
Precisely. The legal status is limited and tightly regulated.
Yeah.
And this isn't some old law they just have on the book.
They've updated it, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
The key legislation is the iGaming License Act, which they introduced in 2023. It was a very deliberate move to centralize licensing and tighten up the rules for digital platforms.
So let's talk about those rules, the hurdles. An operator might look at a $50,000 application fee and think, okay.
Right. And a $30,000 annual renewal, on the surface, that's manageable.
But the real gatekeeping starts with the administrative side of things.
It does. The single biggest hurdle, by far, is the mandatory physical presence.
A physical office.
A fully operational physical office inside Bhutan with resident personnel. You can't just run it from Malta.
Wow. And why is that such a barrier? I mean, is it just the cost, or is it designed to filter people out?
It's both. For a global company, setting up shop in a place like Bhutan is logistically complex and expensive. But more than that, the government needs direct accountability.
They want someone they can actually talk to.
Exactly. If there's a problem, the person responsible is right there in Thimphu, not in London. And they also, they really push for joint ventures with local partners.
Which adds another layer of friction right away.
And means sharing control and profits. It's clear they're not just screening for money, but for a deep, long-term commitment to their country.
And I imagine the paperwork reflects that intensity.
Oh, it does. We're talking extensive due diligence. Audited financials for the past 3 years, detailed business plans, and comprehensive background checks on every single director.
This is not for startups.
Not at all. And on the player protection side, the standards are also unusually high.
What stands out there?
The minimum age is strictly 21.
Higher than the usual 18.
Much higher. It reflects that cautious, culturally sensitive approach. And then you have mandatory KYC and anti-money laundering compliance, which is rigidly enforced. Operators have to offer self-exclusion platforms, voluntary spending limits.
So basically global best practices.
That tailored for the Bhutanese context, yes.
Okay. So we have this perfect framework on paper, stable, clear, high standards. But now we get to the paradox you mentioned, Section 2, which our report flags with a critical risk warning.
Yes. And here is where, like you said, the air goes out of the tires. The market, even though it's legal, is effectively closed. It is just not economically viable for a new company.
Let's just repeat that number for the shock value. The active user base is only 17,700 people.
17,000.
That's less than 2.3% of the entire population. You're trying to launch a global business to target the population of a single small town.
And that tiny pie is being split between almost no one. As of 2025, there are only 3 licensed operators.
3. So it's an intentional oligopoly.
It is. Our research confirms that market access for a new player is near impossible. You can't just apply and get a license,
You'd have to buy one of the existing 3.
which would come at a ridiculous premium and defeat the whole purpose.
But let's say, just for argument's sake, a license was available. We have to talk about the minimum capital requirement. Because this number it's just absurd.
It is the ultimate deterrent.
Right.
The minimum capital requirement is $1 million.
1 million.
And that money has to be deposited and held in escrow in a licensed Bhutanese bank.
Okay, let's do the math on that. $1 million to participate in a market where the entire annual revenue is $27 million.
You are required to lock up 3.7% of the entire country's iGaming revenue.
Just to open your doors.
Yes, it's a massive stability bond, of course.
Yeah.
But psychologically, it tells any operator, your commitment here has to be about more than just profit.
So when you add it all up, the fees, the office setup, that $1 million deposit, what's the total cost of entry?
You're looking at roughly $1.37 million just to start. And trying to justify spending that much to target a $27 million market, which you have to share with 2 other companies, it defies all economic logic.
It really does. It makes you think the 3 operators in there now are either local institutions or they got in under completely different rules.
That is the most likely scenario.
Yeah.
And then once they do start earning, there's the tax.
Give us the breakdown.
It's an 18% tax on gross gaming revenue, plus a 15% corporate income tax.
So the effective combined rate is what, around 33%?
Something like that. It's not the highest in the world, but for a low-volume market, every single percentage point hurts.
And what about payments? Modern platforms need to be frictionless, but I imagine there are some limits there too.
A big one. There is a complete and total ban on cryptocurrency.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and a lot of tech-savvy players in Asia prefer crypto for its speed and anonymity. So banning it immediately puts a technological ceiling on the market.
And all of this, the tiny audience, the restrictions, it must make the cost to acquire a customer astronomical.
It does. Our data shows the customer acquisition cost, or CACO, is staggeringly high, somewhere between $250 and $400 per player.
$250 to $400.
But here is the fatal flaw in the math.
Hmm.
The average revenue per user, the ARPU, is only about $350.
Wait, hold on. If you spend $400 to get a customer who only generates $350 in revenue before you pay for anything else,
You're losing money on every single new player.
so how is that possibly sustainable?
The whole model has to be based on retention, not growth. Your payback period is at least 12 to 16 months, and that's assuming the player never leaves. It makes scaling impossible.
It really reinforces this idea of a market designed for control, not for profit.
That's exactly.
Okay, let's shift gears. Section 3. Let's talk about the players themselves. What's driving consumer behavior in Bhutan?
The consumer base is pretty young. The median age is 27.4 years. And they're benefiting from a growing economy, about 5.2% CAGR.
So there's some discretionary income starting to appear.
Right. Per capita income is rising to around $4,900. And there's a strong preference for mobile access.
That makes sense.
Mobile adoption is at 85%, so that's where most of the activity happens. But this is also where you see the digital divide.
That 65% internet penetration rate.
Right. That means 35% of the population, mostly in rural areas, are completely offline. So the market is really restricted to the cities.
And we have to talk about the cultural overlay here. Bhutan's Buddhist tradition emphasizes restraint. That must affect how people view gambling.
It's pivotal. Gambling is a very sensitive topic, and there's a real social stigma around problem gambling. This isn't just a regulatory issue. It changes player behavior.
So they prefer lower stakes, maybe.
Lower stakes, shorter sessions, and they really value their privacy.
Which leads right into the advertising restrictions, which are, as our report notes, severe.
Severely restricted is an understatement. You can't advertise during kids' programming. There's a total ban on celebrity endorsements.
Which is a huge marketing tool globally.
Huge. And every single ad has to include a prominent, responsible gambling message.
So if your TAC is already $400 and you can't use traditional marketing, how do you even reach those 17,000 users?
It has to be highly targeted digital marketing, word of mouth. And again, retention. The ad rules are just another deliberate break on growth.
And what are they actually playing?
Lottery is the biggest part of the market. It's culturally accepted, seen as lower risk. After that, it's sports betting, which is very popular with younger men,
And casino games?
favored more by urban, higher-income players. But across the board, the player base really shows moderation. It's consistent with that culture of restraint.
So this whole deep dive really has shown us two sides of a remarkable coin. You have this clear, stable, socially responsible environment.
But on the other side, you have a market where profitability for any new company is, at best, marginally viable. The framework is a gold standard, but the economics create an impossible wall.
So what's the final verdict from the gambling databases research team for any new international player thinking of entering Bhutan?
Our verdict is blunt. Market entry makes no financial sense. That $1.37 million plus investment just can't be justified by a $27 million market that you have to share.
And that you probably can't even get into anyway.
Exactly. For almost any profit-driven company, the risk just completely outweighs the reward. Bhutan has clearly prioritized social integrity over a bustling commercial market.
And this brings us to the provocative question for you, the listener, to think about. Bhutan has built a system with these exceptionally high standards enforced by massive economic barriers. This structure, which intentionally sacrifices profit and commerce, does it represent a necessary blueprint? Is Bhutan's ultra-strict, low-volume, high-compliance model how small, culturally sensitive nations should regulate industries like iGaming, even if the cost is commercial viability?
They've basically shown that you can have regulatory perfection, but sometimes that perfection is the barrier itself. It really forces a conversation about the true purpose of regulation. Is it revenue or is it preservation?
A fascinating dilemma. For the full text of this in-depth market analysis, with the detailed breakdown of all the risks, please visit our website at gamblingdatabases.com.